Hello, everyone. I'm going to give it a minute as people are still arriving. Welcome. Thank you to those of you who have joined us. We're watching the participant numbers climb, so I'm going to hold off on starting until we see them steady. Okay, so we've seen that the numbers are still coming in, but slowing down. So we're going to go ahead and start. Welcome to our new Section Council and Community Advisory Team member webcast. I am Courtney Nashin, the SOA's Managing Director of Global Engagement, and I'm joined by your member and volunteer engagement team members. Thanks for being with us today. We are recording this webcast and do plan to send you both the slides and a link to the recording in a few days. And at any time during the webcast, please do enter your questions into the Q&A and we'll address questions at the end. So if we move to the next slide, please. First, let's start with congratulations. Thank you so much for running for council. We are thrilled you're here. Welcome to the council. Welcome to your advisory team. We're grateful for your volunteerism and leadership within the SOA sections and community. As we move to the next slide, you can see here what the agenda is and the flow for our conversation. We're going to provide you with a lot of information regarding SOA sections and community. It's going to give you a really strong foundation for your new role as a council member. You're going to learn about how sections and community operate, your role as council members, and we're going to be sharing the expectations for that role as well as other important information that we think will be helpful for you in your roles. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Beth Gall, who will kick off our training session.
Thank you, Courtney. Next slide. So each section and community is responsible for developing each of the areas listed on the screen. The sections and community are really working to develop continuing education, research, and other ways to increase member engagement. And how you can participate will be discussed in a little bit later in this presentation. Next slide. So I'd like to note that for the purpose of this presentation, when we refer to council, that is also inclusive of the Emerging Topics Community Advisory Team. We sometimes get questions about the different groups that are affiliated with sections. So let's review the three main areas that apply to all: section and community members, council members, and friends of the council. So first, section and community members. When we refer to section members or community members, we're referring to the individuals that have joined a specific section and thus have opted into receiving related content. As of this year, all sections in the community are available to SOA members as part of their annual SOA dues and no longer have any separate fees. Section and community members don't have to be members of the SOA. Anyone with an interest in a specific subject matter can also join. So yes, your neighbor across the street who's a data scientist, they can join. Your Aunt Eleanor, she can join as well. There is going to be a nominal fee associated with non-SOA members to join sections. We have 17 sections and one community, and one person can join as many as they would like. Non-SOA members that are section and community members are referred to as affiliate section members, and we'll discuss this more later. While the list of specific members cannot be shared due to privacy reasons, we can share the number of members and some demographics such as location, gender, and primary area of practice. Next slide. So the section and community council members, that's you. So 9 to 12 people are elected by their section or community members to create or develop activities and educational content for the broader section and community membership. as we just discussed. You can have, sorry about that. You have to be a section or community member to be a council member. You also have to be an SOA member for most SOA section councils. Council members are listed publicly, and some sections have an email listserv for the council only. Next slide. So friends of the council. Many of you may have started your volunteer work with sections as a friend. Friends generally ask to be a friend so that they can learn more about the section and volunteer to help with section projects. Friends are meant to serve as an extension of the council, an additional volunteer pool that can help the council to fill open roles. That can include webcast moderators, meeting, session, or podcast speakers, authors of articles, and more. Friends are members of the section they are working with, and friends are not listed publicly. The SOA maintains a list of the friends for each section. The main difference between the council and the friends is that friends are not elected and therefore cannot vote. Friends are also not expected to attend all calls where council members are. Before we talk more about the council structure, we have a poll. Next slide. So which statement is false? A, you have to be a section member to be a section or community council member. B, you have to be a section member to be a friend of the council. Or C, you have to be an SOA member to be a section member. So feel free to put in your answers. And it's looking like we actually have the poll. It's an incorrect poll. So we are going to keep moving forward. The answer, though, is C. C is false. You do not have to be an SOA member to join a section or a community. Section and communities are open to anyone. So next, I'm going to turn it over to Dee.
Thanks so much, Beth. I appreciate that. Can we move to the next slide? Awesome. We're going to talk a little bit about council structure and roles. So each section or community leadership group works together for the benefit of their members, and the structure of each leadership team is fairly consistent. Council and community advisory team leadership consists of a chair, vice chair, secretary, and budget manager. A few councils don't have a secretary, so in this case, the secretary position rotates so every council member has a turn taking notes during the call. Next slide. Each section and community are assigned an engagement specialist and a staff actuary. They're your liaisons to the SOA. Engagement specialists like Carla Eisenberg and Caitlin Kramer, who you'll see a little later, join each monthly call and guide you in your planning. We assist with many items, including providing historical details, assisting with communications, coordinating polls, financials, and identifying ways that the various sections and community can work together. Staff actuaries are our subject matter experts. They are a great resource when you're looking to develop topics on webcasts, meeting sessions, and or research topics. We've created a resource for you titled the Best Practices Handbook that will be distributed following the session. This handbook includes more information about staff roles and much more that we'll discuss later. But in the event that you need SOA support and you just don't know where to turn to start with, please contact your engagement specialist. Next slide. Next slide, thank you. Each section has bylaws that were established when the section was first formed. The bylaws are rules that provide internal governance to the council. Section bylaws include information about things such as quorum, officer duties, and vacancies. Next slide. Frequently, during meetings, councils require a vote take place. Typically, leadership roles and anything that has an expense would be voted on and approved by the council. The most frequent topic voted on is how to spend the fund balance, including sponsoring various activities and travel reimbursements. Before any vote can take place, the council needs to have a quorum or majority. So this means if you have a 9-person council, you must have at least 5 people present on the call for quorum. If you've got a 12-person council, you must have at least 7 present. If there are not enough individuals present, the council can still have a discussion, but the vote can't take place. In this case, the chair is responsible for writing a description of what's to be voted on with an appropriate explanation. The engagement specialist will then create and send a confidential poll to the council via email. All council members are encouraged to submit their vote quickly. Next, we're going to launch poll number 2, please. You have 5 out of the 9 council members on a section council call, and someone proposes a new program to offer that'll cost the council $2,500. Do you have enough council members present to vote? True or false? I'll give you all a few more seconds to vote. Glad to see a super engaged group of participants today. All right, let's go ahead and close the poll and share the results. The answer is a true. So thank you for those of you who were paying attention and got that right. Next, I'm going to turn it over to Carla.
Thank you, Dee. Hello, everyone. And now we'll turn our attention to the different roles within the council and community advisory team. Next slide. We'd like to highlight roles related to content that some of you may be familiar with. These include webcast coordinator, newsletter editor, meeting session coordinator, professional development committee or PDC liaison, and a newly created role we are introducing this year, the section research committee liaison. Each section has been assigned an SOA staff person who is your professional development or PD partner. The webcast coordinator organizes and schedules the section's webcasts with the help of the PD partner. This role involves recruiting speakers and moving the process forward while keeping the council updated along the way. Another council role is the newsletter editor. Councils either have one newsletter editor, co-editors, or a newsletter editorial team. Each section has been assigned an SOA staff editor to work with the volunteer newsletter editor to ensure that articles are published. The full council offers support and ideas throughout the process. As mentioned previously, sections have a strong presence and develop many sessions for SOA's 3 major meetings, which are the health meeting, VALACT meeting, and the impact conference. And that brings us to the role of meeting session coordinator. The meeting session coordinator serves as the liaison between the PD partner, in this case, the SOA staff person tasked with planning the SOA major meeting, and your section council. This role involves making sure everyone is updated and all deadlines are met. If this sounds daunting as a new council member, you can work with an experienced meeting session coordinator your first year so that you're ready to lead the following year. Some councils choose a different coordinator for each meeting. The main responsibility of the meeting session coordinator is not to create the content. The main function of this role is to coordinate with the section council to create and submit session proposals, to identify moderators and speakers for the selected sessions, and to plan networking events at the meeting. A more recently added role is the PDC liaison. This person will meet periodically with the Professional Development Committee, or the PDC, to learn about the latest developments in SOA's PD and report back to the council. And in 2025, we are introducing a new role called the Section Research Committee Liaison. This section council member will participate in the Section Research Committee. They will introduce ideas for research on behalf of their section and be prepared to contribute to discussions around proposals for research and section research funding allocations. Council engagement-related roles include the volunteer liaison and webpage coordinator. The volunteer liaison works with SOA staff to add volunteer roles to SOA's Volunteer Opportunities database. The webcast coordinator works with the section's engagement specialist to keep the section webpage updated and relevant to section members. Next, please. Some councils also have unique content-related roles. These include a networking coordinator who works with the engagement specialist to coordinate and plan networking opportunities for your section members. Councils might also have a podcast coordinator. Podcasts are audio recordings that are posted on the SOA website. They typically last 10 to 20 minutes, but can be longer. If there's a particular topic you think would be of interest to your membership, the podcast coordinator works with your engagement specialist. Podcasts can be on a variety of topics. They can be about a past or future meeting session, a webcast, or a hot topic in the industry. They can be in an interview format or something more creative. Podcasts are easy to produce. We record them as Zoom meetings and send them out for editing. No special equipment is required. Your section council might also consider additional ways to engage your section's members where applicable, including affiliate council members. As we mentioned earlier, an affiliate council member is a section member who is not an SOA member. Affiliate council members can be renewed at the end of their one-year term, but cannot serve more than 3 consecutive years. Please work with your engagement specialist if you have questions related to affiliate members in your section. Some sections have subgroups or subteams that focus on specific areas. The subgroup lead may need to hold calls in addition to the monthly section calls and report back to the council. Liaisons to other sections are council members that are likely involved with 2 sections and look for potential collaboration opportunities between them. Some sections combine specific roles, such as the digital communications coordinator. This role combines the webpage coordinator with a LinkedIn group coordinator. LinkedIn groups offer your section the opportunity for 2-way communication with your members. However, not all sections have a LinkedIn group. Most sections also have Friends of the Council, which we discussed earlier. Next slide, please. Now that you're a member of a section or community council, it's time for you to shine by finding your areas of interest and volunteering. There is always someone who has done the job before you that can offer you advice, and the council is always there to help. You'll never be left all alone to fulfill your role. So step up and find a role within the council you're passionate about. A section council is no place for sitting back and waiting. Make the most of your section council experience and volunteer for a role. Next slide. So what do we expect of you? Next, please. We expect that you will be an active participant in all the section's initiatives. We're counting on each one of you to bring your energy and knowledge to work on the council. All SOA volunteers are required to sign and adhere to SOA's volunteer agreement. The volunteer agreement includes items such as volunteer conduct, confidentiality, conflict of interest, volunteer contributions, and antitrust. This protects all volunteers and the organization. Once you have completed the SOA volunteer agreement, it's time to participate fully by attending monthly council calls and planning meetings, by completing polls and votes in a timely manner, and by taking on additional council tasks and roles as needed. For the section newsletter, most councils ask that members either write an article or find a colleague to write an article. This is sometimes referred to as write or wrangle. The role you choose is up to you. We encourage you to reflect on what you would like to get out of this experience and how you can make an impact for your section members. Step forward, Share your ideas and thoughts. We need more doers, and we absolutely cannot take a sit back and see what happens attitude. Next slide, please. So what's in it for you? What are you going to gain from your experience on the council? Well, that's all up to you. You can make this the best experience of your life by fully participating in all areas of the section or community work. You'll learn many leadership techniques and be given a chance to practice these new skills. You'll build upon your communication skills and abilities by working with several different groups of people using many different communication tools. And you'll have the opportunity to network and learn and grow with a large group of actuarial professionals, people who share your passion for the profession. And on the next slide, we have a poll. And you are on a council call and a new idea pops into your head about a possible contest for the section. What do? When it slows down, you can close and share the poll. Do you sit back and wait because somebody else might suggest it? Do you stay silent because your idea is probably silly? Or do you share your idea with the council? We know this is an obvious question, and the answer is C, because no ideas are silly, and the council deserves the chance to discuss your ideas. And now we'll turn our attention to section calls and meetings. This is where the bulk of the council work is accomplished. Next. The schedule for the monthly calls is discussed after new council members have joined in October. A day and time that works best for the majority of council members is determined. This is a recurring appointment on your calendar. For example, calls will always be on the second Tuesday of the month at a set time. Council officers, your chair and vice chair, are encouraged to develop and send out the agenda in advance of the call. The agenda is typically sent with the previous month's meeting notes. You might be asked if you have any items for discussion to add to the agenda, or you may be asked to provide a short write-up on the status of a project you're working on. Standard council agenda topics include the following: a review of the previous month's meeting notes to assure that the main discussion points have been captured, a section newsletter status update, an update on the meeting sessions, seminars, webcasts, and podcasts that are currently being planned, subgroup reports, updates on current research projects funded by the section, an SOA staff update from your engagement specialist, any votes needed to approve section funding, and any other projects or initiatives that the section is currently working on. If the secretary is not on the call, another council member can volunteer to take notes. However, now most meetings are recorded, and typically the secretary will capture notes from the recording. Next slide. In addition to monthly calls, each council is required to have at least one planning meeting to prepare for the coming year. In the past, these planning meetings were often in person. However, over the past few years, we've learned that a virtual planning meeting can also be very effective. Your council has the option to meet virtually at any time during the year. However, section leaders are encouraged to hold a planning meeting soon after new council members have joined. The planning meeting should offer enough time to complete any necessary discussions. 3 hours seems to be the maximum length to hold a virtual session before needing a substantial break. Some examples of scheduling can be 2 sessions in one day or 2 sessions on different days with as much as a week in between. This allows council members a chance to think through the topics, come to the second meeting with new perspectives. Of course, your engagement specialist will coordinate with the section council to find a schedule that works best for everyone. During the planning meeting, the council should refer to the section mission statement to ensure it aligns with the work plan for the coming year. Agenda topics in planning meetings typically include the following: identifying volunteers for open positions within the council. Projects that don't have a champion often don't get completed. A discussion of the number of webcasts the section would like to produce during the year. and the approximate timing for each webcast. We try to get these on the schedule as far in advance as possible. Available webcast dates tend to be very limited in the fourth quarter. A discussion of topics to focus on during the year and the best format to deliver that. For example, the topic is machine learning. The council would determine which formats are best to present this information. Is it a webcast, meeting, session, a meeting session, an article, a podcast? The same topic can also be presented in various formats. And a discussion of volunteer expectations, including those that are included in the volunteer agreement form. There are many other topics that can be discussed, but councils need to keep in mind that the time goes by quickly. The planning meeting should focus on annual planning and not on items typically covered in a monthly council call. Next slide. The year goes by very quickly. To help each council keep track of the important items each month, we've developed a year-at-a-glance calendar. The calendar is updated and distributed quarterly to all council members. It's intended to be a useful planning tool for councils. And now I'll turn it over to my colleague and fellow engagement specialist, Caitlin Kramer, to discuss the various forms of communication.
Thank you, Carla, and hi, everyone. You can go to the next slide. According to George Bernard Shaw, the single biggest problem is the illusion that it has taken place. Next slide. One of your main responsibilities is communicating to the section membership and to make sure it has taken place. We offer several possibilities to assist you with this. E-news or e-bulletins are sent out in blast email format and usually have a regular schedule. It can be a consolidated update for members on council activities and upcoming events. The SOA Engage platform can be accessed by typing engage.soa.org or through the SOA website under Tools and Resources and then Community. You'll first need to log in with your SOA user ID and password. Your section has its own community, which you can use to share documents with your members. LinkedIn is another discussion forum to reach out to members with ideas, links, or even ask for volunteers for articles or meeting session presenters. Not all sections have a LinkedIn page, but the sections that do are encouraged to use it to their advantage. Next slide. One of the most visible forms of communication for your section is the section's webpage. The section webpage is managed by SOA staff and includes the following: a landing page where you can highlight your current activities, a newsletter page, which houses the last several years of your section newsletters, and a resource page, which is a good place to house things that are recurring and helpful to your section members. There are also boxes on the side with links to join the section, offer feedback, and volunteer. Each section webpage coordinator will work with their engagement specialist to update the content on their section webpage at least every other month using the schedule provided by the SOA. Your section webpage is often the first place members go to look for information about what the section is working on, so it is critical to keep this information up to date. Outdated or inaccurate information won't serve your members well. Your engagement specialist can provide webpage analytics to help the section tailor the content each section finds most valuable on their webpage. And on the next slide, we have a poll. You can go ahead and launch a poll. We already had a sneak preview at this, so your section has a new program is going to offer to your members. What forms of communication can the council use to notify your section members about this new offering? LinkedIn, e-news, section webpage, or all of the above. Leave it open for a couple more seconds. All right, you can go ahead and close the poll. Awesome. Looks like most of us got it correct. D is the correct answer. We can use all of the above forms of communication to notify new members about offerings. Next slide. And we'll go out one more slide. Planning valuable continuing education requires plenty of planning time, probably more than you would ever guess. Here's a diagram developed by our professional development team to provide you with a guide on how to plan for a meeting, webcast, or podcast. We've come to understand that the more time we have to plan each of the events, the better the results. Plan out the schedule for the entire year as soon as possible. With the number of virtual education options having increased beginning in 2020, and the addition of the webcast subscription program to the SOA's professional development offerings, Section councils are being encouraged to develop these plans further, including details about subject matter and proposed timing of webcast offerings. This will help your engagement specialist and professional development administrator determine where collaboration with other sections may be possible and help avoid subject matter overlap. Work back from the date you would like to present the topic to find out when you need to start preparing. Even the most interesting topics will not have attendees if there isn't enough marketing time to communicate this to our members. So do not skimp on the planning. And next slide. Next slide, we'll talk about budgeting. As of 2024, there was a shift in how sections were funded. Prior to 2024, each section utilized individual fund balances, which were generated by dues and webcast revenue, while paying the SOA an administrative fee. Market research has shown that sections dues were a barrier to new members joining, and we piloted $0 dues with the emerging topics community. The successes of the emerging topics community led the board to approve the decision to remove section dues starting this year. Some of you may be aware that sections still hold fund balances. Beginning with fiscal year 2025, all section fund balances will be pooled and allocated to each section based on the proportion of membership. All pooled funds will continue to be used only for sections and communities, and the balances are intended to be distributed via allocations for the next 3 to 4 years, at which point the SOA will begin including community allocations in the annual operation budget. Your allocation will be utilized to fund the section operations and activities listed on this slide. Your specialist is a great resource for budgeting guidance and information. As you're being asked to weigh in on the funding section activities, remember to focus on member value and benefits. Next slide. In 2025, we will be piloting the section research committee. Research projects will be determined by this committee with a council representative from each section and the emerging topics community. The committee will receive a separate budget allocation. And next, I'll turn it back over to Dee.
Thanks, Caitlin. Next slide, please. Sections are part of the SOA and as such cannot enter into any contract or external partnerships without SOA approval. So your section is similar to the sub of a company. Therefore, SOA assumes all liability for contracts and partnerships. All contracts and partnerships with an outside organization must be reviewed by the SOA legal team. Multiple sections can financially support any event. The most common instance for sections to partner on an event is at one of SOA's 3 large meetings. Webcasts and research are other activities that sections partner together on. The council who submits the proposal to other sections for collaboration must provide information about the event, justification for the request of additional funding, and the anticipated financial responsibility for each section. Once each section has received approval from their council, the details will be provided to the engagement specialist who will develop the partnership agreement. Each section chair will sign the agreement and this will be kept on file. Funds will be deducted from the appropriate section account after the event. This formality helps document the partnership, and it's important because payments can be months apart from an event and can be dealt with by different council members. Some points to keep in mind when entering into a partnership with another section include the following. Make sure each section makes a substantial contribution. Clearly define the roles for each section. Clearly define and mutually understand the benefits and opportunities along with the costs and risks for each section, and a clear understanding of the expected outcome of the partnership. If you've been approached to create a partnership or sign a contract with an external company or organization, your first call should be to your engagement specialist. They can review the partnership and provide guidance on the types of partnerships and contracts that the SOA typically agrees to. Next slide, please. Guidelines have been developed for each of the types of events listed on this slide. We want each of your section events to be as successful as possible, so the guidelines will help you understand the process and how far in advance of an event you need to begin planning. Each of the guidelines can be found in the section Best Practices Handbook. If you have additional questions, please speak with your engagement specialist. Next slide. On the screen, you'll see some additional reference information. Don't worry about trying to write each of these down or remember them. We will be sending everyone a copy of the presentation. In addition to the Best Practices Handbook, you'll receive updates following each SOA board meeting. These updates are shared after each in-person board meeting and highlight the outcomes and how they relate to sections. Next, I'll turn it over to Jessica to talk about SOA communities.
Perfect. Thanks, Dean. So many of you may have seen some of this information on our town halls that you were invited to earlier this year, but I wanted to ensure we cover that with this transitionary year. So first, the case for change. That was presented in 2020 to our SOA board due to declining section membership, despite the growth of SOA membership overall. So although there's been an increase with the removal of section dues, we still have a need to engage younger and our international members. And the benefits of the SOA community are highlighted here, many of which you can also see as part of the sections that you are part of today. So the shift to communities does allow for greater inclusivity of more members, including international and younger members, easier member collaboration, the removal of any subject matter overlap across topics. It also offers all of us the opportunity to be positioned as thought leaders within your respective community. It's a great opportunity for the growth of our volunteer pools. And then we have some new non-elected leadership opportunities that kind of go into that volunteer growth idea, as well as new ways to communicate and learn. As a reminder, the board did approve the full evolution to the community model, which will start this year as planning and launch fully with dues renewal this end of this year. So here is a map of how here are the sections that will be rehomed into the new 7 communities. So we have our career development, emerging topics, general insurance, investment and risk management, health, life and annuities, and our retirement community. We also want to call out a couple things here. That community research committee is what we're piloting that Caitlin mentioned this year as a section research committee. We also envision that we have a stronger cooperation with our internationally based regional committees for that boots on the ground effort, continuing our collaboration huddles and that community liaison role that was spoken about earlier to our PD committee. Now, this is the mapping of where your current section will be mapped into the broader community. I will pause on this slide for a moment to let you read through this. While I point out that there are the opportunities for additional topic area subgroups within the structure across all communities. All right, and moving on to the community transition key dates. You'll see here that summer 2024 is when we had board approval to move to fully evolve to the community model. We also had that initial communication with you all in form of town halls. This fall and winter, you obviously are going to start your planning meetings that we've mentioned and receive that allocation total for next year. This spring is when we'll start onboarding you to the new model, explaining what the different roles are so that you have a strong understanding of what those new roles will be, so that you can make decisions on the transition and what roles you might be interested in, similar to how we've done today. We also will hold elections for our 2026 communities and determine those leadership roles for the new community. In this summer 2025, you'll notice that we have an additional planning meeting added here. This will be for your community coming together to start planning. The planning meeting will look very similar to the one that we mentioned today for your section, but instead about how your sections can collaborate within the new community model. And then, as I mentioned it in fall, is when we will go ahead and launch the community model fully. And now I'm going to open it up for questions. So we do have the Q&A box here. If you want to go ahead and type any questions in the box, we'll go ahead and answer them as they come in. Okay, so we do have one question about the balance. It says unused balance, but technically there is not going to be an unused balance. So I'll go ahead and answer that. The section fund balances are all being pooled, and that pool will only be servicing the section and community model going forward. So that will be reallocated to the sections until that fund balance is drawn down. And following that, it will be part of the SOA's operating budget to fund the community model. And I see another question about the role of friends. Dee, do you want to hop on and answer that one?
Absolutely. I was struggling to find some buttons there. So our friends really are an extension of our councils at this point. As we move forward into our community model, we will be plugging them in more as part of our content and engagement work groups. So not necessarily part of our community advisory teams, but for the next year or so, our friends will remain our friends as they have always been.
Thank you. We have another question that I think you'd probably be best poised to answer. Do we have any insights into which content mediums, so podcasts, articles, webinars, etc., have more viewership?
Everybody's favorite answer is going to apply here. It depends. It really depends on the subject matter. When we have a good match of subject matter to delivery vehicle, those numbers can get pretty darn high. We've had webcasts with thousands of viewers, but we've also had podcasts with thousands of downloads. So the key really is matching the content to the delivery type.
Perfect. And I'll also echo that we mentioned earlier, it's great sometimes to stack different ways to deliver the same message based on what that might be. So I know one Dee specifically worked on is about AI. So you might have a webcast, but also a podcast on it, and try and hit people in different mediums. Another one for you, Dee. Any volunteer opportunities within my section will be discussed on section calls. What if I feel unsure to take on the additional task at the beginning?
This is such a great question, and one that we hear so often. Folks who are new to the section model or to our community model are sometimes a little bit hesitant to step up and say, hey, I'll try that thing. We encourage you to just, if you have any interest at all, get involved with whatever that opportunity is. We as staff are here to help guide you every step of the way with whatever you need to fulfill that particular role. If we don't ourselves have the knowledge, which would be really rare, we can connect you with a volunteer who has filled that role before you. We want to make sure that you have resources at your disposal. We never, ever, ever want to see anybody frustrated by a volunteer role. So we will find resources for you.
Perfect. We'll give it just another minute as there's no other questions in the Q&A chat now. And then as a reminder, this is recorded and we'll distribute this to you after, along with that best practices handbook that has been mentioned several times throughout. I will say it is a large document that is extremely helpful. So I highly recommend looking through that when you have some time. And then obviously you have Caitlin, Carla, Dee, and myself with any questions that you might have. However, you will see Caitlin, Carla, and Dee on your calls quite a bit more frequently. So definitely use them as a resource if you think of any questions following this. All right. See no other questions in the Q&A. I think we can go ahead and let you all go and say thank you so much for participating and attending today. We're excited for this next year and for you all to join in your leadership roles. Thank you.